Jessie held her son in her arms. She patiently comforted him. She told him that it was just a bad dream. She told him that what he saw was not real. After comforting her son, Jessie went out into the yard to gather up her clothes, and saw her son's sailboat toy in the sink. Then she went to her room to gather up her son's paints. When she got up, she saw that her dress was covered in paint. Jessie was a little angry. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Jessie opened the door. But when she stepped outside, she didn't see anyone. She didn't have time to think about it. Jessie packed her clothes. She grabbed her coat and her keys and got ready to go out. It was the day her good friend Gray had invited her to go sailing. She put her suitcase in the car. And drove to the marina. She was accompanied by a seagull. At the pier, she saw the captain. Gray, the captain of the ship, was making preparations for the trip. First on board were 3 other friends. They greeted each other warmly. While they were greeting each other, in the distance, we see Jessie and his mate walking towards us. The captain greeted Jessie warmly. He asked what was wrong. Jessie didn't answer Gray's question. She hugged Gray tightly and said she was sorry. Gray was puzzled, but said if you feel that today is a bit inconvenient, you can choose another day to sail. Jessie looked at the boat in the distance and said to Gray that there is no problem. We can go out to sea. Gray showed a happy face. He happily led Jessie to the boat. The boat was now full of the 6 men who were to sail. With Gray's command, the 6-person Delta sloop is now underway. The sea was calm and the sky was clear. Jessie was too tired to sleep. In his dreams, there was a sandy beach and waves, and a jacket swaying in the waves. She was unconscious on the beach. Until the waves hit her and woke her up. When Sid saw Jessie waking up, he poured her a glass of champagne. Then they went out on deck to get some air. Since Jessie had been divorced for years, Gray wanted to take this opportunity to express his feelings. He started teaching Jessie how to steer. But it didn't last long. The sailboat, which had been sailing at full speed, suddenly, she stopped moving. We're in a no-wind zone. Jessie asked Gray if we were going to make it back. She was worried about the kids. Suddenly, there's a big dark cloud in the distance. Gray rushed to the walkie-talkie to ask for help. Suddenly, a woman's voice comes on, asking for help. Gray rushes to ask her where she is. But the signal suddenly cuts out, and then the storm starts to move in. Gray told everyone to put on their life jackets and take shelter in the cabin. A huge wave overturned the sailboat. At this moment, they don't know what to do. Suddenly, a huge cruise ship appeared in the distance. They ran to the top of the ship. They entered the cabin to look for the crew. At that moment, they heard a noise. The vice captain went to check but only found a set of keys. Jessie saw the keys and grabbed them. To his surprise, he found that the keys were his own. Jessie put the 2 pendants together. She realized that the pictures were of her son. Then they all went down to the lobby. Jessie felt someone behind her. A dark shadow flashed. The vice captain rushed after him. Jessie and Gray were going to retrieve him together. They came to room number 237. The mirror had 3 big words written on it. The 2 of them had a disagreement. The 2 of them split up after a big fight. Mr. and Mrs. Lisa followed the blood trail. They came to the theater. But Jessie, after the separation, after the breakup, Jessie arrived at the theater the mirror had told him about. Looking at the scene in front of her, she saw that Gray had been shot and fell down. Suddenly, a masked man on the 2nd floor, armed with a shotgun. He killed Mr. and Mrs. Lisa. Jessie escaped and ran all the way to the deck. The masked man followed him onto the deck. Jessie exhausted the masked man's bullets. He was knocked off the deck with a shotgun. He grabbed a fire axe to defend himself. On the deck, the masked man stopped Jessie. But the masked man was no match for Jessie with the axe. And Jessie was knocked off the boat. In the break room, Jessie was attracted by a piece of music. She walked in and saw it was an old phonograph. Suddenly there were shouts from outside. Jessie slowly made her way out to sea. The scene before her gave her the creeps. It was Gray and the others out at sea. Jessie was terrified and hid. When she got off the deck, she saw Gray and the others getting into the boat. Suddenly, he heard several people talking exactly as they had on the boat. Jessie crumpled to the floor. She dropped her keys too late to pick them up. She ran around wildly and came to a room. There were notes all over the floor. She hurriedly made a copy of the notes. The handwriting was exactly the same. Jessie stood up and looked around. She found a lot of black coats and a lot of shotguns. She didn't know what to do. Suddenly, Jessie noticed a necklace identical to her own hanging from the fence at her feet. She looked at all the necklaces on the ground. Suddenly, she realized something. Jessie picked up her shotgun. She put enough bullets in it. She was ready to take the plunge. First, she stopped the mate. Then she found Mr. and Mrs. Lisa. She gave them the shotgun. At first, Jessie lured Mr. and Mrs. Lisa into room 237. She killed and wounded them. Then Lisa, badly wounded, escaped the room. Lisa ran to the cruise ship's equipment room for help. Jessie chased Lisa all the way to the deck. But when Jessie reached the upper decks, Lisa's body was lying all over the place. Looking out to sea, there was a Jessie on the second deck. There's Gray and the others at sea. It's like she's in a loop.